So let's go over what's probably the most complex grammar lesson about the use of adjectives in Greek, and that's its syntax. Syntax is a Greek term to talk about how when words are put together in a certain order, they convey a certain meaning. And adjectives actually have a complex syntax. There's ways to put the adjective together with the nouns and a definite article that renders its meaning differently depending on the order or sequence. So the first adjective use we're going to talk about is what we call attributive. And attributive is, in fact, the simple adjectival. It's a fancy word for saying it's an adjectival use and of the adjective when it's functioning as an adjective, not like a noun or something else. And attributive is about what it also refers to the position of the adjective in a phrase or sentence. So we're going to talk about the attributive position for the adjective. So notice that what we have here is ha agathos anthropos, the good man. But we also have ha anthropos ha agathos and anthropos ha agathos. And what I've written, these are the examples. And what I've written in the furthest right column is what I try to notice is the pattern, where D refers to the definite article, and N refers to the noun, and A refers to the adjective. And what I've written here, DAN, is the word order. This is the ha is the article, so D. Here is the adjective A. Here is the noun. Here's the noun N. And what we have here is the word order being D-A-N. D-A-N. And so let me clear the screen. When you have a D-A-N pattern, when the definite article, the adjective, and the noun are written in this order, the adjective is said to be in the attributive position, and it's translated as the good man. What happens if you have a D and DA word order? It's also translated as the good man, but this is actually an emphatic use. So the good is emphasized. If you were to write DNDA, that's a way to emphasize that it's the good man. Somehow the goodness of the man is being emphasized in the construction. And then there's an alternative way, not often used, but you do see it every now and then, NDA. And NDA, this is also translated the good man, means relatively the same as this. NDA pattern means the same thing as this. But notice that what's common in the attributive use, what's common is that the definite article DA, DA, and DA are together. So whenever you see the article and the definite article and the adjective adjacent to each other, that's a good clue that you probably have an attributive use of the adjective, and the translation will be the good man. What happens when you have a different pattern? When the definite article is connected to the noun, not the adjective. So it's not a DAN pattern, but a DNA pattern. And then we see another DN pattern here, where the definite article and the noun are next to each other. This is what we call the predicate position. This is the predicate position. And in the predicate position, so this again, definite article, noun, adjective, DNA. It's called the predicate position because here the adjective will be acting as a predicate adjective. So the translation for this is the man, and I'm going to put this in parentheses, is good. So you will not translate it as the good man. The good man is translated with the above attributive example, but with a predicate example where the adjective is said to be in the predicate position, the translations would be the man is good. Now, the word estin Estin, I'm going to write it here, is understood. So this is the form of me, he, she, it is. So I wrote is here in parentheses because it's inferred. It's understood to be used even though it's not written out. And so if you see a definite article, a noun, and an adjective sequenced, then you'll know that it's a predicate use of the adjective and the verb a me, or in this case estin, is being inferred. If this here you have an adjective, a definite article, and a noun. Notice that again the definite article is attached to noun. This is an ADN pattern, and this is also translated as a predicate adjective. The man is good. Let's clear the board. What happens when the article is missing? If the article is missing and you have a adjective noun pattern or a noun adjective pattern, then the translation could either be attributive or predicative. It can either be a good man or a man is good. So agathos anthropos, because this is a definite article, it could be a good man. Notice I used a because the article is not present. So a good man, or a man, parentheses, is good. And this also can mean a good man or a man is good. And there is really no way to tell the difference between the attributive use or the predicate translation or predicate use, except context. And once the phrase is used in a sentence, you'll know whether either it's an attributive use or a predicated use. Finally, let's go over the substantive use of the adjective using some Greek examples. But before I do that, let's go ahead and make a correction. Sorry, there's a typo here. I should erase, so you should black out this article. Does everyone see that? So go ahead on your workbook or your study guide, please black out that article. So that shouldn't be there. That's a typo. Are we good? So here we have ha agathos estin Jesus. And this is a good example of the substantive in play, where the ha agathos, the article in front of the adjective, tells me that, oh, the article might be used substantively since it's not connected or modified to any noun. And so this could be translated as the good. And since ha and agathos is masculine, what might be implied is the good man. Estin is Jesus. And while it might be possible to translate this as Jesus is the good man, there's a general rule in Greek that most of the time, if you have two words in the nominative, so agathos, ha agathos is in the nominative, and then Jesus is in the nominative. If you have two words in the nominative, then which is the subject sentence, and which is the predicate nominative of the sentence? Well, in this case, the one with the article usually is the word that's the subject of the sentence. And the one without the article, here Jesus, usually is the predicate nominative. So we would translate this as the good man is Jesus, not Jesus is the good man. In the second example, we have another, we have this, Jesus is the subject because he has the article. So here is Jesus is, and we have, in this case, a choice. We can say Jesus is good alone because agathos doesn't have an article in front of it. It might be that the article, that agathos here is being used as a predicate adjective, But if it is being used substantively, this could be a possibility. It could also be translated as Jesus is good man. Jesus is the only good man, where monos, it can be translated as alone or only. And here's just simply another example where agathos is not in an independent position substantively, where it's acting the subject of the sentence, but it's in the predicate position, and it's being used as a predicate adjective or a predicate nominative.